Hi there, Mark Vergeer here with a third video this day that I'm recording, and this one is a video response to Lawnboy's post 1975. He actually did a topic on backwards compatibility and does it matter? I think backwards compatibility is a good thing. A lot of people that are against backwards compatibility or do have something against it say, you know, it's all bogging down a modern game, it's holding it back because a modern game system, because it needs to encompass the older technologies, it'll make it more expensive, it'll make it less reliable. And to some extent they are actually right, because retrofitting, for example, the PlayStation 2 with PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 3 with PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility actually did cause some issues, and yeah, makes the game more expensive perhaps. Actually, most major retailers, most major brands did something I mean, backwards compatibility has always been here, or cross-platform compatibility has always been with gaming ever since the beginning. It was possible to play Atari 2600 games on the Coleco with an adapter. It was possible to play certain Commodore 64 games on the Amiga. Not that bad, not that great, but it was possible. The original Xbox games were to some extent playable on the Xbox 360, and the Xbox 360 games are actually to some extent playable on the Xbox One, which is great. PlayStation the same. You know, the PlayStation 2, it's backwards compatible with the original PlayStation 1 discs. Not all games run, but they do run. And the PlayStation 3, well, only the first fat one did offer backwards compatibility with PlayStation 2 games, but they took that away. Yeah, for the most part, backwards compatibility means compatibility with the media that the games are on. But with these newer consoles, oh yeah, and I forgot, of course, the Gamecube, the WiiU, you know, they all each play the games from the previous generations, and the Gamecube was able to play Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games with the Game Boy Player. Nintendo 64 wasn't backwards compatible. Actually, the Snes, the Super Nintendo, it was actually designed to be backwards compatible with the NES, because the chip, the CPU, actually is a 16-bit version of the 6502 or 6510 that is in the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. But for some reason they never really brought out or made NES cartridges playable on the Super Nintendo. Perhaps it could have been like the Game Boy, the Super Game Boy cartridge does for the Game Boy carts, but yeah, for some reason they just didn't bring it out. Perhaps they were afraid of being in competition with themselves. I'm not sure. Yeah, of course, the whole Game Boy range, the Game Boy Advance plays Game Boy games, Game Boy Color games. The Game Boy Color plays Game Boy, you know, there are all sorts of games that are backwards compatible. The 3DS plays the DS games, you know, so backwards compatibility is a thing. But for example, with the PlayStation Portable and the PlayStation Vita, things change, because the Vita doesn't allow the UMD discs of the PlayStation Portable to be read. It is possible to play PlayStation Portable games on the Vita if you bought them digitally. There's quite a few digital downloads that are playable on the Vita from the PlayStation Store. There's a ton of PlayStation Portable games that actually will run on the Vita. Same as the original PlayStation games that were playable in digital download form on the PlayStation Portable. They're actually available to be played on the Vita as well. So the Vita is quite backwards compatible. So something that perhaps not everybody knows, but it does. Well, the Vita pretty much is dead. It's a dead system. The PlayStation Store is still functioning. No, not really. New games are released for the system, but you're still able to download and perhaps buy some of the PlayStation Portable games on the Vita. Of course, the Wii with the Virtual Console. I believe that is actually shutting down in a couple of days. So if you want your backwards compatibility fix legally, you should actually power on your Wii and buy some Virtual Console games, because they will not be available in the future. Yeah, this is just me, on a tangent. The Switch, it does offer some Virtual Console-like games. It does offer some Neo Geo games. The 3DS offers quite a few digital downloads on various systems. If you've been part of the Ambassador program, early adopters of the 3DS, the new 3DS, you would have gotten Sega Master System, Super Nintendo, digital downloads, backwards compatible Virtual Console games, which are not available to be bought in the stores. Yeah, I think backwards compatibility when it comes to cartridges or discs with the older generations, they really needed some sort of hardware add-on which made it more expensive. But these days, with the powerful hardware, I mean, the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One actually have a very similar way in which they provide backwards compatibility to the previous system. Modern Retro Gaming, he actually did an excellent video on backwards compatibility on the Xbox and the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, which is very much worth checking out, because he really goes into the details of what backwards compatibility means on the modern systems done in software. Doing it in software is actually much more versatile than doing it in hardware. Of course, there's compatibility issues, because you really, it's a matter of how you achieve backwards compatibility, how you achieve compatibility. But that basically turns backwards compatibility into legal emulation. To some extent, it is emulation, and I like emulation. So because I like emulation, I probably like backwards compatibility as well. But what Microsoft is doing, or actually says it's doing, and probably isn't doing, but hopefully they will, is actually make the whole Xbox library from the original Xbox to Xbox One, all the discs, available for playing on the Xbox One console. So it doesn't matter if you just find an Xbox One game in a thrift store, original Xbox game in a thrift store, or an Xbox 360 game in a thrift store, or on some shelves, or over at a friend's place, you borrow them, you just stick them in your Xbox One and they won't play because only a limited amount of discs will actually be supported. But hopefully in the future that'll change. So investing in older games actually makes sense, and I guess quite a few of these companies, Sony isn't doing any of the backwards compatibility these days. Every company is to some extent, but Sony isn't. They just shied away from it completely. Why they do it, I'm really not sure. Perhaps they think it damages the brand. Up to the PlayStation Vita, they actually do backwards compatibility. With the PlayStation 4, it's just, it's all over. They just don't do it. They don't offer it. And which makes the PlayStation 3 library a bit of a dead end. I mean, it only plays on the PlayStation 3, and you know, once these systems die, you know, it's just basically over. I believe there's actually a PlayStation 3 emulator for the PC that is actually making huge strides. So I think, you know, from a collector's perspective, a hardware, you know, a gaming disc collector, cartridge disc collector, you know, an old-fashioned gaming collector, backwards compatibility to some extent ensures the longevity of your collection, ensures accessibility, because otherwise it will just be some shelves with bits of plastic on it and metal, which aren't to be enjoyed. So, you know, the Mega Drive, Genesis, playing Sega Master System games, you know, I mean, every system offered backwards compatibility. Back then, probably quite a good thing, because the games were very expensive and they gotten a bit cheaper, but these days games are very expensive. They're you know, 60 euros, $60, that's nothing, you know. And it's nice if you will be able to play those games in the future without those games becoming obsolete. But probably they will, and that's something that really is holding me back from buying a lot of games for the modern systems. I do tend to buy only the games on the modern systems that I want to play in here and now, because I don't rely on the games or the system to be up and running and available in the future. You know, it's more of a here and now, throwaway, disposable type of experience, you know, like buying a ticket to the movie, to go to the movies, or go to a amusement park, or go on a holiday, you know, just have these experiences, pay for those experiences, and, you know, store them in your brain, and perhaps revisit those experiences for as long as it's possible on these systems to actually able to play that. But you know, there's rumors of the PlayStation 5 coming out. Now, I'm very curious. I think, how do you say that? I think with these digital downloads, and digital downloads, I think backwards compatibility is actually a way to preserve the digital downloads, to preserve access to the digital downloads. But you're very reliant on the publishers and the producer, the maker of the console, whether or not these games will be available. And I think we will be seeing what digital downloads are actually worth when it comes to the services shutting down. I mean, the Wii with the virtual console and the downloads, the Wii Store, that's actually one of the first consoles that people used to play games, to buy games online on a large scale. Xbox Live on the original Xbox also is one of these platforms. I do actually have quite a few of these Xbox Live games on the hard drive of one of my original Xboxes. The online aspects of it won't work. I won't be able to re-download them because the servers are down. I will never be able to access this on a different Xbox, because I don't think it'll be possible to transplant the hard drive of one of my Xboxes to another if it were to die. So basically, these games are accessible by the grace of the hard drive of the system being operational. Of course, with these older systems, having multiple versions of those consoles. I mean, I have a couple of Xboxes. I've quite a few PlayStation 2s. I actually have a few Xbox 360s and and some PlayStation 3s, just to have bought them cheap, came across them, just to have access to the physical media. I think Microsoft, what it does with the backwards compatibility, and perhaps with the Xbox One X, and perhaps the next iterations of the Xbox being backwards compatible with the previous versions, will and have the online services and the downloads available through Xbox Live, will actually ensure that people who invest in those games as a platform, as a means of entertainment, will not have to fear losing access to their digital downloads, because that actually will be happening in the next couple of years. When Nintendo shuts down the Wii store, the software store, what will happen when the Wii breaks? People will not be able to re-download their games. Same with the DS, the iWare, DS iWare, and the 3DS Play Store. When will they be shutting down? The Switch and the 3DS appear to be, still two viable systems. The Wii will probably overtake the 3DS, but I'm actually quite fond of the 3DS, and I'm still buying games for it, in digital download form, but also physical. I'm straying a bit from the backwards compatibility thing, but I think it's a means to keep people invested in a platform longer than the platform actually exists. And you see, with the newer version, the newer generation of consoles, at least Microsoft's console, the Xbox and the PlayStation 4, you see that these games, these platforms, they have various iterations that actually offer newer and more enhanced experiences within the same console generation. And then backwards compatibility and upwards compatibility, compatibility as a whole is needed in order to not fragment the market too much. Now, newer games on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, I believe they have to be interoperable between the various iterations of these respective platforms. I do foresee a problem with the PlayStation 4. I mean, if Sony adheres to their stance on not offering any backwards compatibility, I would love for Sony to offer PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 1 backwards compatibility, physical media also. If Sony strays away from that, I don't know if it makes any sense to buy a PlayStation 5. I mean, there's rumors of a PlayStation 5 being in the works. Now, perhaps these things go away if you look at the new games as a service thing that a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but quite a few of the console makers are actually offering. Sony offers something. It offers playability of PlayStation 3 titles on the PlayStation 4 by streaming those games. Same goes for the... it's not the same for the Xbox One. The Xbox One, the Game Pass, actually allows you to download and install the games temporarily on your hard drive, but just have access to the whole library, and yeah, like Netflix, like Deezer, all these other audio streaming platforms. It sort of makes the whole library accessible on a console without actually the need to go out and buy games, go out and well, from a price perspective, actually joining such a service for $10 a month may actually be more cost effective than actually buying physical media that you have to download and install anyway. So perhaps ownership of games will go away and these companies will start to offer games as a service. We may actually move towards that. So storing games locally will only be to be able to play those games. I think streaming these games like Sony is doing is, the internet is just clogged up as it is. I mean, it's getting faster and faster, but still response times are it's I mean, you turn on the game mode on your TV in order to have fast response times, but if you stream the media from some server, quite a long distance away, you'll reintroduce that lag and you will just have an inferior experience. So playing the games locally, have all the assets of the game available locally, not streaming it, I think it makes for the best experience. And how you get these games into your system, be it from physical media or just download it digitally. I think if you rely on physical media, backwards compatibility with the media and stuff, that actually still is a thing. But if you look at games as a service and offer backwards compatibility in some sort of transparent mode like Xbox One is actually doing, I mean, I've actually, before, I was very naive, but I downloaded a ton of Xbox Live Arcade games and Xbox Live games. A lot of them are trickling down on the Xbox One. A lot of the Xbox 360 games become available, the digital downloads become available on the Xbox One. I hope that all these games will eventually be able to be playable on the Xbox One, because quite a few aren't. So it does make sense to hang on to the Xbox 360 console, not only for the disc, but also for some of the digital media. But I lost the thread of my, tangent all over the place. I think what Microsoft is doing, I think I prefer that over how Sony PlayStation is doing it. I'm very curious what Sony will actually do when it comes to the PlayStation 5. Will they introduce backwards compatibility in some sort of way, shape, or form? The PlayStation brand and Japan is actually quite a bit of a thing. It seems that the Japanese sort of moved over to mobile gaming and left Sony out in the cold a bit more. It's a very different market and a very different dynamic from the Western gaming market. I think mobile gaming and touch gaming. I mean, I have a ton of games on my iPad. Touch gaming, even Geometry Wars is playable on the iPad, but it's just not the same. But I guess it's for it could be the way to play games for a whole bunch of people. Yeah, physical media is definitely going away. We will not be seeing, perhaps the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, the Switch. They may actually very well be the last generation of systems that offers some sort of physical media thing. It's going to be digital only, I guess, in the future. Yeah, backwards compatibility, some sort of software emulation layer to have the entire library accessible. would be something that is actually quite cool. But then again, I mean, that's me. I like to have a library. I like to have a library of games. I like to have a library of books. I love libraries. I like to have access to a whole to a whole library of games, and not only the most popular titles, which actually is the case if you look at these game libraries as a video game store where you rent stuff, or a video game rental store, or Netflix. Netflix doesn't offer its entire library all the time. It just swaps in certain bits and out. The most popular series and films and stuff will be accessible. But Netflix is not a library, a media library of games and TV shows, of movies and TV shows. It can't be. They don't have the space, so it's always going to be some sort of selection. Same with games as a service. It will only be a certain collection serving the main populace, and not necessarily the niche gamer. So I guess the niche gamer will lose out eventually because of perhaps PC gaming. Perhaps PC gaming, Steam. Perhaps PC gaming is the future, where good old games and Steam is actually still a way to have access to your digital downloads in a more open form. But then again, there are already Steam games that will not play on Windows 10, but you will have to use a Windows 7 or even a Windows XP machine. Steam actually still functions, the client still functions on Windows XP machines. Good old games or another service. It offers certain games that will not run on Windows 10. It will run on previous versions of Windows. So yeah, backwards compatibility. I guess human culture is for for what it's worth. We live in a digital age. It seems digital is synonymous with being able to preserve it, for posterity. But I guess it's just as expendable, just as perishable as human culture always has been. Books deteriorate. Digital downloads become not accessible. Storage is an issue. It's just a part of human nature. And I guess digital downloads, backwards compatibility actually kindles a need in me that sort of makes my games available to me as a library, to be able to go back to older games, older niche games. Games as a service sort of negates the need for, backwards compatibility in the sense that older discs become available. It's a different way of looking at it, I guess, but games as a service, offering streaming of games like PlayStation is doing. I've tried these gaming services, these streaming and gaming services. I've tested streaming services that were actually located very close to my home and further away, even on different continents. But they never were good enough. They just weren't good enough, and even with my super high-speed internet connection, I do have a very high-speed internet connection, 500 megabits down and 200 up or something like that. It's insane. But still, anyways, these are my 2 cents. I think it's important, backwards compatibility. I like it. I like emulation. I like to have access to different games. Not everybody is like that. There's a lot of people who just live in here and now and just want to experience the next best thing. Nostalgia, being nostalgic, probably is, you know, being into history probably is something that... Aha! Okay. Recording has stopped automatically. It was a jump cut. This Canon 200D does only record for 30 minutes, which is good to know. Anyways, what I was saying is that I think the historian, the librarian in me, likes emulation, likes backwards compatibility. The more hedonistic person that just lives in the here and now, wants to experience things in the here and now, and likes to move on to the next different thing, they probably won't care about backwards compatibility at all, which is fine, you know. I hope that there's enough historians, librarians, retro gaming nostalgians, nostalgics, yeah, to preserve what is good to be preserved. Anyways, I'm signing off. This is just one big ramble, 3 big rambles actually, probably thrown into one. Mark signing off, and I'll be back with another video soon. Bye. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed, do subscribe and like if you like. Okay, Mark signing off, and I'll be back.